It was a quiet evening in a small town. The streets were almost empty, and the air was calm. Children had already gone inside their homes, and the sound of crickets filled the night. In one corner of the town lived a man named David. He was known as a kind and gentle person. People often said that he never hurt anyone. He worked hard, helped neighbors, and cared for his family. David's house was small but full of warmth. His wife was in the kitchen preparing dinner, and his young daughter was sitting at the table doing her homework. David was just about to sit down with them when suddenly, there was a loud knock at the door. Bang! 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 Everyone inside froze. It was unusual. Nobody knocked that hard in this peaceful town. David slowly walked to the door, his daughter watching him with worried eyes. When he opened the door, he was shocked to see two police officers standing there. David Miller, one of them asked in a firm voice. Yes, David replied, confused. Without another word, the officer grabbed his arm. You need to come with us. David was stunned. Come with you? But why? What happened? The officers did not answer. They only tightened their hold and pulled him forward. His wife rushed to the door, panic in her eyes. Wait! Where are you taking him? He hasn't done anything wrong. But the officers ignored her. They pulled David outside into the dark street. Neighbors began opening their windows and doors, whispering among themselves. The sound of footsteps and voices spread quickly through the street. Everyone wanted to know what was happening. David tried to remain calm. Please, there must be some mistake. Tell me why I am being taken. Still, no answer. The silence of the police officers was more frightening than any accusation. His daughter cried loudly, calling out, Papa! Papa! Her small voice broke the hearts of the people watching. But the officers did not stop. They pushed David into the back seat of the police car. The car engine started, and in a moment, they were gone. The street was left silent, except for whispers and questions. Why him? Someone asked. He was always so good, another replied. Maybe he was hiding something, a man muttered. No, I know him. He would never do anything bad, a woman argued. The town was filled with confusion. David was respected. He always helped others, whether it was fixing a broken fence, carrying groceries for the old, or giving food to someone hungry. People could not understand why he was taken like a criminal. Back in the small house, David's wife fell to the floor crying, holding her daughter close. Her heart was broken, but her mind was full of questions. Why would they take her husband? Why without reason? Inside the police car, David sat quietly. His hands were cuffed, but his eyes showed no anger. Only calm confusion. He kept thinking of his family, his little girl crying, and his wife begging for answers. He whispered to himself, I have nothing to hide. The truth will come out. The officers avoided eye contact with him. Their faces were tense. They looked nervous, almost as if they knew something they were not allowed to say. One of them kept glancing at a folder lying on the front seat. A thick file with David's name on it. The ride felt long. Finally, they reached the police station. David was pushed inside. The cold walls, the smell of dust, and the sound of keys locking doors surrounded him. Other officers looked at him with curiosity, some even with doubt. They placed him in a small cell with iron bars. You will stay here until further notice, one officer said. But why? What am I accused of? David asked again, his voice steady but strong. No answer came. The door shut with a loud metallic sound. As David sat down on the hard bench, his mind filled with questions. He searched his memory for anything wrong he had ever done. But he could not find even a single thing. Outside the cell, two officers whispered to each other. David could not hear their words, but he noticed the worried look in their eyes. Something was strange. It was not a normal arrest. Back in the town, rumors spread like fire. Some said David had been involved in secret activities. Others said it was all a mistake. Some believed the police were hiding something bigger. Nobody knew the truth, and the mystery only grew deeper. Night fell, but David did not sleep. He sat in silence, staring at the shadows on the wall. His heart was heavy, not for himself but for his family. He knew they were suffering without answers. In that moment, David made a decision. No matter what happened, he would stay strong. He believed that truth could not remain hidden forever. But in the police station, the file with his name remained locked on a desk. Inside that file was something that would soon shock everyone, something that could change the entire story. The morning after David's sudden arrest, the town was restless. People woke up with only one question in their minds: why did the police take him? The small community, which was usually calm and peaceful, now buzzed with whispers. At the bakery, two women stood in line, their voices low but sharp. "I heard they came for him because of something serious," one said. "But what?" "David never hurt anyone," the other replied quickly. At the school gate, parents gathered. Some shook their heads in disbelief. "My son said he always helped the kids cross the street safely," a father said. "Well, maybe he was hiding something behind that kind face," another muttered. The town had never seen such confusion. Half of the people defended David, saying he was good, kind, and honest. The other half began to doubt him, as if his silence somehow proved guilt. Rumors spread like smoke through every street, every shop, every corner. Meanwhile, in David's small home, his wife Anna struggled to stay strong. She had not slept all night. Her daughter had cried herself to sleep, holding onto her father's jacket like it was the only safe thing left. Anna's eyes were swollen, her hands trembling as she poured herself some tea. But the tea grew cold because she could not take a sip. Every knock on the door made her heart race. Every passing police car outside the window filled her with dread. Her neighbor, Mrs. Green, came to visit. She sat beside Anna and held her hand. "Anna, listen to me. David is a good man. Everybody knows it. This must be a mistake." Anna tried to smile but tears rolled down her cheeks. "Then why don't they tell us anything? Why are they keeping him like a criminal? If it's a mistake, why can't they fix it now?" Mrs. Green had no answer. She only squeezed Anna's hand tighter. Outside, more neighbors whispered. Some wanted to help, but others stayed away. People were afraid of the police. They feared that speaking up might bring trouble to their own doors. By the afternoon, the story had spread beyond the small town. Strangers came, asking questions, wanting to know what crime David had committed. But there was no answer. Only silence from the police, and silence always creates the loudest fear. Inside the station, David sat quietly in his cell. He heard footsteps, doors opening and closing, voices talking in hushed tones. He noticed the way officers looked at him when they passed, some with doubt, some with pity, and some with a kind of nervous respect. One officer, younger than the rest, walked past David's cell several times. Each time, he slowed his steps, as if he wanted to say something. His eyes showed conflict. Finally, he stopped and whispered, "Stay strong. Not everything is as it seems." Before David could respond, the officer walked away quickly. That single line gave David something to think about. What did the officer mean? Why would he say that? If David was truly guilty, there would be no reason to whisper encouragement. Something was wrong, very wrong. Back in the town, the whispers grew darker. Some people claimed David was linked to dangerous groups. Others said the government had his name on a secret list. No one had proof, but people love stories, and rumors often travel faster than truth. One evening, Anna went to the police station with her daughter, demanding answers. "Please," she begged the officer at the desk. "Tell me what my husband has done. Tell me why he is here." The officer avoided her eyes. "I can't say anything, ma'am. It's under investigation. But you took him like a criminal. My daughter cries every night. She doesn't understand. Do you think this is fair?" Anna's voice broke with pain. The officer's face showed discomfort, but he only repeated, "I'm sorry. I can't say anything." Anna left in tears, her daughter holding her hand tightly. The silence of the police was heavier than any words. That night, the town was restless again. Some people felt guilty for doubting David. Others convinced themselves he must have done something terrible. But nobody knew the truth. And in a dark office of the police station, the mysterious file with David's name still lay on a desk. Officers opened it, whispered among themselves, then shut it quickly whenever someone entered. Whatever was written inside was powerful enough to keep them silent. The truth was there, but it was not yet ready to be revealed. Meanwhile, David sat alone in his cell, thinking of his family and his town. He had lived an honest life, but now he was painted as something he was not. He closed his eyes and whispered a silent prayer. Far away, Anna lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The whispers of the town reached her ears, but she refused to believe them. In her heart, she knew David was innocent. The only question was how long would it take for the truth to come out, and what would happen when it did. The town waited in suspense, and so did David's family. The whispers grew louder, but the truth remained locked away, like a storm waiting to break. The cell was small and cold. The walls were gray, the air heavy, and the only light came from a dim bulb hanging above. David sat on a hard bench, his hands resting on his knees. He had never been inside a police station before, not even for a visit. Yet here he was, locked behind iron bars, treated like a criminal. The sound of keys echoed in the corridor. Officers walked back and forth, their boots striking the floor. David noticed the way some of them glanced at him. Their looks were not of anger but of unease, as if they were confused about why he was there at all. One officer stopped outside the cell. "You should get some rest," he said flatly. David raised his head. "Rest? How can I rest when you won't tell me what I've done?" The officer avoided his eyes and left. The silence that followed was heavy. David leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes. He thought of Anna, of his daughter, of their small home. He imagined his daughter's face pressed against the window, waiting for him to return. The thought cut deep into his heart. Hours passed slowly. The clock on the wall ticked, each second louder than the last. Suddenly, the door to the corridor opened, and two senior officers entered. They carried a thick folder, the same one David had noticed in the car. They placed it on the table outside his cell. David's eyes followed their every move. The folder had his name written on it in bold letters, David Miller. One of the officers opened it. Papers rustled. The men whispered to each other, their voices too low for David to hear clearly. Still, he caught fragments. This doesn't match. How could he be on the list? It's impossible. David's chest tightened. He wanted to demand answers, but he stayed quiet. Sometimes silence reveals more than questions. Finally, one of the officers looked directly at him. For a moment, their eyes met. The officer's face was pale, almost guilty. Without a word, he closed the folder and left the room. The other followed quickly behind. The file remained on the table, untouched, like a shadow holding secrets. Later, the younger officer, the same one who had whispered encouragement, appeared again. He walked slowly, pretending to check the locks. When he reached David's cell, he leaned closer and spoke in a low voice. "You don't belong here. There's something in that file, something none of us can believe." David frowned. "Then why am I here?" The officer hesitated. His eyes darted toward the security camera in the corner. "I can't say more. Just stay strong. The truth will come out." He quickly walked away before anyone noticed. David's heart pounded. What could be in that file? He replayed his life in his mind, searching for anything that could be twisted into guilt. He had lived a quiet life, worked honestly, helped neighbors, raised his family with love. There was nothing dark in his past, or at least nothing he knew of. Night fell again. The cell grew colder. David lay on the bench, staring at the ceiling. Every sound in the station echoed: the slam of doors, the crackle of radios, the hushed voices of officers passing by. Suddenly, he heard two officers talking outside. They didn't realize he was awake. "I can't believe it," one said. "I know. But if it's true, then we arrested the wrong man," the other replied. "Not just wrong. We might have ruined an innocent life." David held his breath, listening carefully. But then the voices faded as the men walked away. The words replayed in his mind: the wrong man ruined an innocent life. His hands clenched into fists, not out of anger, but out of the desperate need for answers. Something bigger was happening, something beyond a simple arrest. Back in his home, Anna sat with her daughter. She lit a candle, praying softly. Her daughter asked, "Mama, when will Papa come back?" Anna forced a smile through her tears. "Soon, my love. He will come back soon." But inside, fear consumed her. The silence of the police was unbearable. In the town, people continued to talk. Some grew sympathetic, realizing David's arrest made no sense. Others grew more suspicious, feeding the fire of rumors. But none of them knew the truth locked away inside that mysterious folder. As the night grew deeper, David closed his eyes again. He told himself to stay calm, to hold on. He believed that truth could not be buried forever. Yet, he also knew one thing: whatever the police had found, it was not something small. It was big enough to make officers nervous, big enough to keep them silent, and big enough to change everything. The mystery had only just begun. The night was long, and silence filled the police station. Most officers had gone home, but two men still sat in the office, staring at the folder with David's name on it. The folder had been passed around all day, yet nobody dared to speak openly about what was inside. Finally, Officer Harris, the younger one, broke the silence. "We can't keep ignoring this. If we hide the truth, we'll destroy an innocent man." The older officer, Captain Reed, shook his head. His face looked tired, his eyes heavy. "You don't understand. This file comes from higher authorities. It's not just our decision. If we reveal it, we may be risking our jobs, maybe even more." Harris leaned forward. "But Captain, look at it. The evidence is clear. David Miller isn't guilty, he's the opposite. He's a hero." Reed sighed deeply. For a moment, he closed his eyes, as if remembering something painful. Then, slowly, he opened the folder again. Papers slid out, some old, some newer. There were reports, photos, and letters. And there it was, the shocking truth. Years ago, before moving to this quiet town, David had been involved in an incident that no one knew about. A terrible accident had taken place in another city, a fire that threatened to kill dozens of people in a building. While most ran away, one man had run inside. That man was David. The reports described how he saved several lives that day, carrying children and elders out of the smoke, risking his own life again and again. Yet he had never spoken about it. He never asked for recognition or reward. After the fire, he quietly moved away, starting fresh, never telling his neighbors who he really was. But the shocking part was not just his heroism. The government file had a mistake. Somewhere along the way, his name was confused with another man, someone dangerous, someone truly guilty. Because of that clerical error, David's name appeared on a secret list of suspects. And now, because of that mistake, he was sitting in a cell. Officer Harris slammed his hand on the table. "This is unbelievable. We arrested a man who risked his life to save others. And all because of an error?" Captain Reed rubbed his forehead. "It's worse than that. If we admit this, it means the system failed. People will lose trust in us. That's why some want to stay silent." "But silence is destroying him," Harris argued. "His family, his town, everyone is confused. And he's suffering for no reason." The room fell into silence again. Both men knew the truth, but the decision was heavy. Meanwhile, in his cell, David sat awake. He didn't know the details, but he felt something was wrong. The strange looks, the whispers, the folder, everything told him there was a truth hidden somewhere close. Back in his home, Anna comforted her daughter again. She could not sleep. She thought of her husband's calm face as he was taken away, the way he said nothing, only looked at her with quiet strength. She held on to that memory like a rope in the dark. The next morning, the whispers in the town grew louder. Some people started doubting the police instead of David. "Why won't they tell us anything?" a shopkeeper asked. "Because maybe they don't have anything to tell," another replied. "Or maybe they're hiding something big," said a third. The confusion spread. But inside the station, the truth was already uncovered. Officer Harris returned to David's cell later that day. His voice was low, but his words carried weight. "David, listen. I can't tell you everything yet, but know this: you are not the man they think you are. The truth is on your side. Just hold on a little longer." David studied the young officer's face. He saw honesty there. For the first time since his arrest, a small light of hope flickered inside him. "I told you," David said softly. "I have nothing to hide." Harris nodded. He wanted to say more, but footsteps approached, and he quickly walked away. That night, Captain Reed sat alone in his office. He held the folder in his hands, staring at the reports of David's bravery. He read the testimonies of people who had survived because of him. Tears almost came to his eyes, but he blinked them away. Finally, he whispered to himself, "What have we done?" The shocking discovery was clear now: David was not a criminal. He was a man of courage and sacrifice. And the system had betrayed him. But the hardest part was still ahead. Would the police admit their mistake? Or would they keep hiding it to protect themselves? The file lay on the desk, the truth written inside. A truth powerful enough to clear David's name, but also dangerous enough to shake the trust of an entire community. David waited in his cell. His family waited at home. And the town waited in suspense. The storm of truth was coming. Morning sunlight broke through the gray clouds, but inside the police station the air was still heavy. Captain Reed sat at his desk, staring at the folder that had caused so much chaos. His hands trembled slightly as he turned the pages again. Each report, each testimony, each photograph confirmed the same thing: David Miller was not guilty. He was innocent. More than that, he was a man who had once saved lives. But the mistake in the government records had turned him into a suspect. And now, Reed had to make a choice: hide the truth or reveal it. Officer Harris entered the office. His young face was filled with determination. "Captain, we can't delay this anymore. The man is sitting in a cell while the whole town tears itself apart with rumors. He deserves justice." Reed sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Do you understand what this means, Harris? If we go public, the department will look incompetent. People will lose trust in us." Harris leaned forward. "And if we stay silent, we'll lose something worse: our humanity. What's the point of protecting the system if it destroys good men?" Reed looked at the folder one last time. After a long pause, he nodded. "You're right. It's time." That afternoon, David was brought out of his cell. He stood tall despite the exhaustion in his eyes. His calmness unsettled many officers, as if he already knew the truth would come out. Reed and Harris faced him. Reed's voice was steady but heavy. "David, I owe you an apology. We made a terrible mistake. You were arrested because of an error in the records. Your name was confused with another man's. But the truth is clear now: you are not guilty of anything." David's face remained calm, but his eyes glistened. "I told you I had nothing to hide." Harris stepped forward, his voice softer. "There's more. Years ago, you saved lives in that fire. We found the reports. Why didn't you ever tell anyone?" David lowered his gaze. "I wasn't looking for recognition. Those people needed help, and I was there. That was enough for me." The room was silent. Officers who had doubted him now looked ashamed. Some avoided his eyes, unable to face the man they had treated as a criminal. Later that day, the truth was announced to the town. A public statement was made: David Miller was innocent. His arrest had been a mistake. The whispers that had filled the streets for days finally stopped. But silence was quickly replaced with shock. At the market, people gathered in groups, talking loudly. "Did you hear? David is innocent. Not just innocent, he's a hero. He once saved lives. All this time we doubted him. How could we have been so wrong?" Some people felt relief, others felt guilt. Those who had spread cruel rumors now hung their heads in shame. Meanwhile, Anna stood in front of her house, holding her daughter's hand. When she saw David walking back down the street, free at last, her heart burst with emotion. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she ran to him. "David," she cried, throwing her arms around him. Their daughter ran too, clinging to his leg, crying with joy. "Papa, you came back." David held them both tightly. For a long moment, he said nothing, just closed his eyes and breathed deeply, as if he was finally free not only from the cell but from the weight of silence. Neighbors gathered around. Some clapped, some apologized, some simply stared in awe. Mrs. Green, the kind neighbor, stepped forward with tears in her eyes. "I knew it. I told everyone you were a good man. And now the truth has come out." David gave her a gentle nod. "Thank you." But not everyone could look him in the eye. A man who had once whispered that David must be guilty now muttered, "We should have trusted him from the start." That evening, the police department held a press conference. Captain Reed stood in front of the cameras. His voice was formal, but guilt weighed on every word. "We acknowledge the wrongful arrest of David Miller. Due to an error in official records, he was mistaken for another man. We apologize deeply for the pain this has caused him and his family." Reporters asked questions, townsfolk watched, and David stood quietly in the background. He did not shout, he did not demand revenge. His silence spoke louder than words. Later, when he was asked by a journalist how he felt about what happened, David answered simply, "I forgive them. Everyone makes mistakes. But I hope this teaches people not to judge too quickly. Sometimes the truth is hidden deeper than we think." Those words touched hearts across the town. People admired his strength, his humility, and his kindness. That night, the atmosphere in the town changed. The whispers of suspicion turned into voices of respect. The same people who once doubted him now saw him as a man of honor. Children pointed at him with pride, saying, "That's the man who saved lives." Anna, watching him from the window as he sat with their daughter, whispered to herself, "This is why I never lost faith." But in the police station, Captain Reed sat alone in his office, staring at the empty cell. He knew the truth had set David free, but it had also left a scar on the department's name. Still, somewhere inside, he felt relief, for the right thing had finally been done. The truth had come out. And it left everyone stunned. The days after David's release felt different in the small town. Where once there had been whispers and doubt, now there was silence, respect, and even shame. People who had judged him too quickly now crossed the street just to greet him. Children waved when he passed, and shopkeepers offered him things for free, though he always refused politely. But David himself remained the same man. He woke early, worked in his garden, helped neighbors with small tasks, and spent evenings with his wife and daughter. To him, life had simply returned to what it should be: quiet, honest, and simple. Yet, to everyone else, he was no longer just David Miller. He was the man who had been wronged, yet forgave. One Sunday morning, the town gathered in the square. The mayor stood on a small stage, with police officers lined up behind him. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. Anna and her daughter held David's hands tightly as they walked to the front. The mayor cleared his throat. "Today, we come together to correct a mistake and to honor a man who has shown us the meaning of courage and forgiveness. David Miller was wrongfully arrested. But instead of anger, he showed patience. Instead of hate, he showed kindness. And years ago, when others ran from danger, he ran toward it to save lives." He turned to David. "On behalf of the town, we thank you. We respect you. And we ask for your forgiveness. The crowd clapped, some even cheered. David, however, only gave a small nod. When handed the microphone, he paused for a long moment. His calm eyes scanned the faces in front of him, faces that once doubted, now filled with admiration. I am not a perfect man, David said softly. I am only human. But I believe one thing: never judge someone too quickly. Rumors can destroy a person faster than truth can save him. If I am respected today, it is not because of what I did in the past. It is because I was given a chance to live honestly. That is all I ever wanted. The square fell silent. People listened carefully, every word sinking into their hearts. David then added, I forgive those who doubted me, and I forgive those who took me away. We must forgive if we want peace. But let this be a lesson for all of us. Sometimes, an innocent person carries the heaviest chains. Tears filled many eyes. Even Captain Reed, standing at the back, lowered his head. For the first time in years, he felt both ashamed and relieved. He knew David's forgiveness was more than they deserved. After the ceremony, children gathered around David, asking questions about the fire he had once faced. He smiled gently, telling them only what was necessary. He didn't like to talk about himself, but he wanted them to understand bravery was not about recognition. Courage, he told them, is simply doing the right thing when no one else will. As weeks passed, the town slowly healed. The story of David's arrest became a reminder of how dangerous quick judgment could be. People began to treat each other with more care. Suspicion was replaced by patience, gossip replaced by understanding. In his home, Anna finally smiled again without fear. She often watched her husband play with their daughter and thought, this is our redemption. Not in awards, not in applause, but in peace. One evening, Mrs. Green visited. She hugged Anna and said, your husband has given this town a gift. He showed us what real strength looks like. Anna smiled softly. His strength was always there. The world just didn't see it until now. As time moved on, David's name was cleared officially. The government corrected the mistake in their records, and his file was closed forever. Yet, to the people of the town, David was more than cleared, he was honored. But David himself never sought honor. He told his family one night, as they sat by the fire, I don't need statues or speeches. I just need this, our home, our peace, and the truth. Anna placed her hand on his, her eyes shining. And now we have it. The final mark of redemption came when Captain Reed visited their home quietly one evening. He stood at the door, hat in hand, his face heavy with guilt. I don't expect forgiveness, Reed said. But I needed to tell you in person, I'm sorry. David studied him for a moment. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. Forgiveness isn't about who deserves it. It's about who needs peace. You need it. Take it. Reed shook his hand, tears threatening his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt truly free. The story of David Miller ended not in anger or revenge, but in respect and redemption. He had been taken without cause, shamed without reason, but he returned stronger not because of what others did to him, but because of how he chose to respond. And for the town, his story became a lesson they would never forget: never judge a man without knowing his story.